Well, hello to everybody here. It's Teresa Sanderson. I'm very excited to connect with all of you today. We got a very special guest for you on the Nurse Entrepreneur Spotlight. Today we are speaking with Rachell Dumas of Light After Nine. And Rachell, I just want to take a moment and welcome you to the show. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me on Nurses Speak They're Young. I love that name, Teresa. I told you that before. I'm in love with that name. It's amazing.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. Well, for those of you who don't know Rachell yet, I'm going to take a minute and just introduce her before we start talking. But Rachell has a business, a company called Light After Nine, where she provides compassionate support to families navigating pregnancy loss, infertility, and maternal health challenges through maternal palliative care management services, emotional resources, and advocacy. Light After Nine empowers families to find healing and hope. So I love this description of the company. And let me tell you a little bit about Rachell herself. Rachell Dumas is the founder of Light After Nine, a nonprofit inspired by her personal journey of enduring 9 pregnancy losses before welcoming her miracle child. A registered nurse and maternal health advocate, Rachell is passionate about improving care for families facing pregnancy-related challenges, and she brings professional expertise and lived experience to the mission of providing financial and educational resources to underserved communities. Mm. Wow, I've got goosebumps already.
That was loaded.
Yes, yeah, your story is obviously very unique. And before we dive full on into that, again, I want to thank you for your willingness to share that story with us today on this interview. I know that it may not always be the easiest thing to do, so thank you for your willingness for that. And as we get started, what I'd like to do, I know my audience is interested in knowing, how did you get started in nursing? What kind of work have you done as a nurse? So just kind of fill us in on a little bit of the backstory of your history in nursing.
Absolutely. What I'm doing now is the complete opposite, if you will, of how I started. And matter of fact, when I started, I was in trauma. I started as a surgical trauma ICU nurse at a level 1 trauma center in
Oh,
Atlanta.
wow.
And maternal health was far from my mind. Matter of fact, we had maybe one maternal health patient that came in through trauma, and we were like, oh my God, what do we
What do we do now?
right? What do we do with this patient? So, but I started in trauma and I loved it. Quickly got burnt out, but I loved it. And I did OR, PACU pre-op, LTAG, education. I helped out with a pandemic. I went to New York because I was a travel nurse when the pandemic first started. And I hate to say this, but I thought if I was going to die, I might as well make a little bit more money than what I was making at the time because I was an ICU nurse. I was going to be in the ICU regardless. And I also started my master's program. I am graduating this year with a master's in nurse informatics. So,
Awesome.
yeah, I do technology and workflow development. And yeah, and now I'm in maternal health. Look at that. Everything I was running away from, I'm here.
Awesome. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about what drew you into entrepreneurship. How did you begin to make that change, and what drew you to really just step fully into it?
Absolutely. So my first business is actually a for-profit. It's called Onward Healthcare Solutions and Education.
Uh-huh.
And I started that after I did a travel assignment in New York. And I got sick, came back to Atlanta, and I saw a major deficit with smaller healthcare entities that didn't have like education programs and whatnot. And they were having trouble keeping up with the latest recommendations by World Health Organization and CDC and DPH. And so I created this business to keep up with those recommendations and made sure that they stay compliant for their patients and their employees. And
Mm-hmm.
really took off with the support of my nursing school. And it's just been great. And I still do that. But now I've moved away from only COVID compliance to education and just general compliance.
Okay.
Yeah. And we also teach PALS and ACLS and BLS and other classes. So it's great.
Fantastic, fantastic. And so when did Light After Nine come to be?
So light after nine, I was kind of like catapulted into the nine place
Yeah,
with a light after nine. That came after a very traumatic pregnancy journey. And if you will, Teresa, I would love to give a brief synopsis because I think it's kind of relevant to what the business is.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, so in 2018, I got my first positive pregnancy test at home, but then I was bleeding. And I went to the OB, and my first pregnancy ended in pregnancy loss. After he did a transvaginal ultrasound, he told me that I was miscarrying that baby, but he reassured me that we're going to have a good pregnancy journey and I'll give birth and everything will be okay, and that this was a normal part of pregnancy. And like I said, I was a trauma nurse at this time. I had no other, you know, educational background to, counter whatever he said. So I went on.
Right.
Yeah, and I traveled to New York in 2020, and when I came home in the midst of starting my business, I found out I was pregnant, and I was bleeding. And this time I went to the ER, and the ER doctor diagnosed me with twins. And he said that everything looked fine. I was still bleeding, so follow up with the OB. And by the time I got to the OB's office, my bleeding worsened. I had 10 out of 10 abdominal pain, vomiting, nausea. I was sick. I was very sick, and I knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
But the OB kept sending me home. I kept coming back to that office, kept going to the ER. I kept being sent home. I was reassured that everything was fine, that the babies were fine. And
Mm.
at 13 weeks and 3 days, I lost the first twin.
Mm.
And all of my symptoms resolved. So in my mind, I rationalized it like I'm still pregnant. Okay, I feel great. The doctor just did another ultrasound after that, and she said everything was fine. So, okay, I allowed my friends to throw me a gender reveal. And that morning of the gender reveal, I woke up wet, thinking I urinated on myself. I cared about my day.
Yeah.
A few hours later, right when my gender reveal was about to start, I went to the bathroom to urinate, and the baby just fell out.
Oh my goodness.
So I knew something was wrong. I went to the ER and I told the doctor what happened. And she asked me, how did you know that you were pregnant? At 15 weeks pregnant and coming to the same hospital that I've been to probably 20 times at this point. Yeah.
Hmm.
So a lot of maternal health disparities at play. And
Sure.
I went on to have more early miscarriages, never referred to a specialist. I was diagnosed with cervical insufficiency, which is when your cervix is too weak to carry a baby full term. So when they get
Hmm.
heavy enough, they basically fall out. And the
Right.
cure to that is a cervical cerclage or a suture, a stitch on the cervix that will be removed right before you go into labor.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to get that, I had to make it to 13 weeks. The issue was I kept having early miscarriages as well.
Oh my.
A friend and a manager of mine said, you need to see a specialist, a reproductive endocrinologist and a reproductive geneticist. Make sure there's no genetic components at play with the miscarriages.
Hmm.
After I saw him, and then I saw the reproductive endocrinologist who put me on medication and also did a workup, and she put me on medication, progesterone suppositories to keep my cervix strong to make it to 13 weeks, and aspirin to prevent blood clots that could be preventing miscarriage.
Right.
I made it to 13 weeks after I found out I was pregnant in April 2021. I graduated from reproductive endocrinology to maternal fetal medicine. The doctor did the procedure. The doctor came out after the procedure to discharge me and said, come back in 7 weeks. Now I've had lost 5 babies at this time.
Yeah.
I advocated for myself to come back sooner and she refused. And trusting her, I said, okay. She said, if the cerclage was failing, you will have excruciating pain and bleeding. So don't worry. And I said, okay. 7 weeks passed, no symptoms. I felt great. I went into the appointment confident, and mid ultrasound, the ultrasound tech left and said the surgeon will come in. She came in and said that cerclage failed. I was distraught. because I had no symptoms. I felt great. So I begged and pleaded her to put in another cyclage higher or to put me on bed rest. And she casually said, "You can go and deliver your baby." And I confirmed with her that the baby would die. And she said, "Yes."
Oh my.
Baby with a heartbeat. And
Yeah.
I decided to fight after that. And I told my village, all my friends, colleagues, coworkers, everybody what was happening. And we found a doctor in Dallas who was well versed in high risk pregnancy surgery,
Mhm.
who saved the twin pregnancy with the same issue of a failed cerclage. He called me on my cell phone, told me to fly there. I caught the red eye there. A 3-hour surgery for him to put in a transabdominal cerclage, which is higher than the vaginal one that I had.
Okay.
Usually took about an hour. He told me it'll take 3 hours just because of the nature of the surgery with the baby coming
Sure.
out.
Mhm.
That surgery took 8 hours.
Oh my.
And I woke up, so everybody's celebrating. We're still pregnant. I'm excited. And once the anesthesia wore off, the contractions set in. And I went into labor for 30 hours and no medicine could stop it. And my water broke. I had to go back to the OR, get both cerclages removed, and deliver my baby at 21 weeks. He promised me to bring me back to Dallas if that was to happen, free of charge. And he said, "You're going to become a mom. I'm going to do this surgery outside of pregnancy." He did so that November. I had a few early miscarriages, but May 2022, I found I was pregnant. I was followed by the reproductive endocrinologist, graduated to a different maternal fetal medicine doctor,
Mhm.
made it to the third trimester. And on December 30th, 2022, I gave birth to a 4 pound, 15 ounce baby boy who is now a pot belly 2-year-old toddler.
Oh my goodness.
And that led to the birth of a lot after nine.
Mm. Wow. So much to unpack in that story. And I
A
just
therapist.
and and I just can't imagine the pain and the grief, the anticipatory grief that you would experience with every pregnancy of just what if and all of those kinds of things. So, congratulations on the birth of your son after all of those challenges and all of those heartaches for sure. Tell us a little bit about the work you do with Light After Nine, and how you serve other people experiencing similar situations.
Absolutely. So a lot after nine has a host of services for birthers specifically. We make sure we find maternal mental health resources. That was pivotal in my journey through
Wow.
all these losses. We found
Hmm.
grants, and we're building our sponsorship to give our own grant because it's expensive. Like I said, I can buy a Lamborghini with my medical bills that I owe. It's
Yeah.
expensive. Loss is expensive. And we help find doctors, high quality doctors and specialists, whether it's cardiology or maternal fetal medicine or neonatologists, whatever you need throughout this journey, especially with the population we serve, which is high risk. We
Hmm.
find those doctors for you so we could take that guesswork out of it while you're going through this trauma. We have a mentorship program, a mom to mom mentorship program, a mentorship. So if you've been there, done that, like I have, unfortunately, we can help the next birther go along this journey. And if you're that birther in the midst of that journey, it is very dark. So you need somebody to help pull you into that light, which is difficult at times when you're on it by yourself.
Right.
And then we have a business to business aspect of a Light After Nine, where we work with hospitals and clinics, OB clinics, where we get in inpatient and offer palliative care at the bedside, which is
Mm.
such an underused service. It is not even underused, it's just not used.
Not used. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When we think of palliative care, for some reason, we think of, end of life. We think of terminal illness, cancer patients, our older population, our aging population, but we
Mhm.
don't pay attention to our high risk pregnancies who need the supportive component of palliative care, and
Hmm.
even our pregnancies who have experienced fetal this our pregnant persons who experience fetal demise and where fetal demise is imminent. We don't think to consult palliative care.
Right.
And there's a
Right.
very, innovative and specialized intersection between palliative care and maternal health that I don't think is has been explored yet, which I'm working on very diligently. I actually just had a meeting with the Center of Advanced Palliative Care Association like maybe a few hours ago. So we have, something in the works coming
I
up.
love it. I love it. And I think that is so, so powerful. I'm a former hospice and palliative care nurse. And in my own personal opinion, I've said before, I don't care where we are on the healthcare
Like,
continuum, everybody deserves palliative care.
yes,
Children deserve palliative care if they're
yeah,
going in for a tonsillectomy. I mean, we should be managing all of their needs, right? So, women, mothers, yes, manage all of their needs, not just what's happening with the body. Again, it just goes back to basic holistic care, doesn't
it
it?
does. It
And
does.
it's how can we miss the mark for
Right.
so long
Right. And we're
on
talking
such,
about millions of lives, Teresa. There are
yeah,
30% of pregnancies in the loss.
yeah,
That's millions of pregnancies a year.
yeah,
And this is just a completely untapped population. Why?
mhm, yeah,
Because it seems like a no-brainer.
right. Well, you would
Everything.
think, anytime, anytime there's death and dying, we need to, palliative care should be involved, and we should
Right.
definitely be supporting those parents who are
Hmm.
going through that journey. I mean, no matter when the loss of a life occurs or a death occurs, it's still so impactful and so such an emotional event that
Right.
we need to support those people. I can't believe we're, well, I can and I can't, right? Believe that we're just missing it. But I just love that you're shining a spotlight on it because it's a huge disparity.
Yeah.
It's an epic fail on the
It
part of our healthcare system, right? It's an epic fail.
It is. And I think we need to just bring light to our healthcare providers in that sector because it really is simple, inpatient wise, to just say, oh, this patient needs a palliative care consult.
Right.
It is that simple. And
Hmm.
we just don't do it. And it's just interesting to think that most people, when we discuss palliative care, they think end of life automatically.
Right.
There's so
Right.
much
Mhm.
that palliative care does that has nothing to do with end of life, but more
Right.
the comfort component. So if you're a high
Yes.
risk patient, you deserve, or any patient deserves to feel comfortable throughout their treatment process. And we're talking
Right.
about 10 months, possibly, depending on, different factors. But 10
Mhm.
months, we have this patient who is undergoing different procedures and admissions due to whatever issues they're having throughout their pregnancy. But then, because even the people that automatically go to end of life when they think of palliative care are still not considering palliative care for these patients who are at risk of losing their babies.
Right. Right. And I think it's, I so support what you're doing
Thank
and
you.
it's just your business and this venture is such a it's a simple opportunity. It's one of those things that you find a need and you fill it,
Yeah,
right?
such
Um,
entrepreneurship, though, right?
yeah, unfortunate, and so sad that you experienced it yourself, but I also love the strength and resilience that you have to have been able to take a step back and put something in place, build a bridge for the people that follow. And I just think that's such a beautiful effort. So thank you for what you're doing and for championing the cause.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
It's not
Oh,
easy.
I'm sure it's not. I'm sure it's not. But there are so many that you're going to help and support and be able to care for in a way that you didn't get to experience. So that's going to be the real blessing, I think, of the whole thing.
I agree.
Love that. Love it. Oh my gosh. I have a couple more questions for you, and thank you for sharing all of this. It's been wonderful to learn about you and the whole experience and about A Light After Nine. What what is one thing that you enjoy most about working for yourself?
Definitely helping people. You know, we're nurses. Our whole career is dedicated to service. And like I said, I've been trauma, and I felt like every time I went to the unit, I was saving a life and I was really making a difference in the world. I felt that satisfaction. And on other units and in different capacities, I didn't feel it quite as much. And there was a emptiness that I felt because I had this hyper service experience with trauma. And then I'll go to education where essentially I'm helping a patient, but more indirectly, right? I'm teaching
Yeah.
somebody to do their job correctly and efficiently
Yep.
and competently to then help somebody. So it's kind of secondary. But
Uh-huh.
here I'm back at it again where I've turned my very real lived experience into this platform where a lot of people who are going through similar experiences are just so afraid to speak up for many reasons, reasonably so. Here I am speaking up and helping them and giving them these resources and changing the systemic issues as well, so that when they're going into these places to get care, it's competent care, it's compassionate care, it's it's the care they actually need and want and deserve. It's their rightful care.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, love that. Love that. And so, thinking about entrepreneurship just a little bit more, you and I both know that there are nurses out there who say, "Oh, I want to start a business," right? Everybody's thinking about a side hustle and but many nurses that I hear from, they want to do it, but they're terrified to do it. They don't know how to get started. They feel like they don't know enough. And so they kind of just stay in this space of being stuck. What
Yes.
is the one piece of advice that you would give to a nurse who is thinking of starting a business, but maybe is afraid to get started? What would you say?
My favorite piece of advice is be comfortable with failure, be comfortable with messing up, and expect it. Literally expect it, because one, that is the best teacher, right? We mess
Mhm.
up, the bigger the mess up, the better the teacher. Hopefully we don't mess up too big. But you're not going to come into this space knowing everything. Even I have multiple mentors, a business mentor, professional, personal ones, and I still don't know everything. I have a lot of help, and sometimes I'm going to drop the ball. But
Mhm.
if you expect it and you brace for it and you learn from it, you're going to do really well in business. You're going to do really
Awesome.
well.
Awesome. I love that. And so I'm hearing kind of two things. It's kind of get started and then also give yourself permission to fail, kind of get comfortable.
Yes,
And I love that because
it
that's, I think it's so important, just recognize it doesn't have to be perfect coming out of the chute. It's
comes.
just important to take action.
It is. I know quite a few people off the top of my head, even very close to me.
Mhm.
Despite of me being an entrepreneur twice over and them bragging on things I've done, they just refuse to start because they want
Yeah.
it to be the perfect time, the perfect product, the perfect service, executed perfectly. And that just doesn't exist. It
Yeah.
just doesn't. It's so unrealistic. And you would never start a business. And those people have literally not started their business because that time never comes. It never comes.
Yep. Yep. I
Never.
love that. I love that. So, before we wind up here, Rachell, again, I want to thank you for sharing time with us today and for sharing your story. And before we finish, I would love to take this opportunity to allow you to just share with our audience how can they connect with you
Yeah,
outside of this interview. And, if there's anything on your website or anything that they need to know about, now's the time. Go ahead.
absolutely. So you can always go to our website for the latest news, events, what we're doing, where I'm at, not in a creepy way. Latest news and information, resources, grants. You can always just look on our website. You can always find us on social media as well. Our number is on the website, email is there. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok, but we don't know if TikTok is on.
True, true.
there, but we're on Threads, we're on Facebook, a light after nine. But professionally, because like I said, we also do business to business. You can find me on LinkedIn, Rachell Dumas. You can also find me on Facebook, and you can email us as well. Our contact information is on the website and on all our social media pages as well. We'd be happy to help a birther or a business. We're here for everyone.
Love it. And your website is?
alightafter9.org. I'm so sorry. Why didn't I say that? I just
That's okay. alightafter9.org. Love, love, love it. All right. So, Rachell, thank you again for joining me today. It's been a pleasure to have you.
absolutely. Thank you for having me, Teresa.
You are most welcome. And to all of our viewers and listeners out there, thank you for tuning in. This is concludes our episode of the Nurse Entrepreneur Spotlight, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.